Very nice, Enzo. The elevator music is perfect.
Thank you, Jeff. Much appreciated.
I want to be.
Alrighty, everybody. I've got 6 o'clock on my computer. Well, thank you all for joining us tonight for our very first session of Tree Keepers for the fall season. We really thank you all for coming, and this is going to be a great class session. So let's go ahead and get started. I am Enzo Nagao. I'm the Development and Volunteer Coordinator for Trees Forever, and I'll be your faithful moderator for today's class. Joining me today is Jeff Jensen, our Director of Community Programs, and Shayla Claiborne, who is our Urban Forestry Project Manager. And they'll be walking you guys through some stuff about tree biology and tree identification. So it's going to be a great night for everybody. Um, yeah, so real quick, just kind of a reminder of the rules. If you could all make sure you're muted throughout this presentation. We'll mostly be communicating with you through the chat. So I'll be kind of spotlighting comments for our presenters to talk about, and then we'll kind of go from there. To get started today, I'm just going to kind of walk you guys through an overview of what the Tree Keepers program is all about, the Trees Forever Tree Keepers program. And then I'll turn it over to the Jeff after that. Give me 1 second here. All right. Hopefully you can all see my screen. Oh, like I said, welcome everybody to Tree Keepers. We're very excited to be with you tonight. So what this presentation is going to be quickly about is just a quick introduction to Trees Forever. I'm going to talk a little bit about what it means to be a tree keeper, some information about some programs and grants we have available. I'll talk, and then we'll move on to talk about tree biology and then tree ID from our faithful presenters today. So here's some information about Trees Forever's mission. Our mission is to plant and care for trees in the environment by empowering people, building community, and promoting stewardship. We do that through a number of ways, and we operate primarily throughout Iowa, Illinois, and Wisconsin. And we have a staff of about 28 to 30, kind of spread throughout that area. And our main metro areas are here in Cedar Rapids and also in Des Moines. So some background information about Trees Forever here. We were founded in 1989. We are based in Marion, Iowa. Like I said, we have about 30 staff members in Iowa and Illinois. We have lots of national projects and have gained recognition through those. To date, we've planted over 3.4 million trees. We touch point with about 7,000 volunteers annually. We assist around 200 more communities and landowners annually and award over $650,000 in grants with technical assistance. And we'll delve into some of our programs a little bit later. But who are we really? So Trees Forever is really about partnerships. So we are proud to maintain a number of very valuable partnerships with the Iowa and Illinois Department of Natural Resources, many different technology firms such as Collins Aerospace, utility providers, healthcare organizations, schools, other businesses and nonprofits, breweries. We work closely with Big Grove and others, private landowners, and most importantly, with you, our faithful tree keepers. You make up the backbone of our operations throughout Iowa, Illinois, and Wisconsin. So to talk a little bit about our service areas, we have one of our main operations here is in the Cedar Rapids area. Our Cedar Rapids team, or our relief team as it's sometimes called, is headed up by Molly Stolke, who's our director of programs, Dina Haverick, who is our relief outreach and communications manager, Ben Vaughn, our project leader, James Partridge, our Growing Futures program coordinator, Ted Olson, our facilities manager, and I forgot to mention we got also Anu Doken, who is a relief project manager. Over in Des Moines, our other metro area, we're led up by Megan Schneider, who's our director of programs for Des Moines, Shayla Claiborne, who's our urban forestry project manager, Bianca Cook, volunteer and community education coordinator, and Seth Adamson, Growing Futures program coordinator. And I will also add that we always employ a number of AmeriCorps members to work at our various locations. And if you're ever out and about and you see them operating some of our trucks, feel free to say hi. Here are some of the areas where our field staff work. This is a little out of date. I'll have to update it, but we have a pretty large field staff that operates throughout Iowa, Illinois, and Wisconsin. So for some information about the programs, we'll start off with Growing Futures. So Growing Futures is one of our youth employment programs, active primarily in Cedar Rapids and Des Moines. Through that program, we employ a number of high school aged kids from around the area to come out with us on weekends and over the summer to plant, water, and take care of trees, as well as undergo professional development opportunities. So if anyone knows any high school age kids who are looking for a first job, this is a great opportunity to do that. We also do a number of volunteer plantings, working with different corporate groups, both in our metro areas and our rural areas, working on a number of different projects there. And we have a number of community forestry programs active in Iowa and Illinois, mostly in rural areas, where we work with landowners and communities to plant trees. So where do we begin? So this is an overview of our training. So today we'll be talking, right now we're doing our introduction to Trees Forever, then we'll go into tree biology and tree identification. And then next week we'll be going over tree planting, tree care, and tree pruning. Then we'll be talking about pests and diseases, tree benefits, and wrap up. So what do tree keepers kind of do? So tree keepers is all about learning about tree care, learn about different aspects of tree biology, planting, and all that stuff. And once you undergo this course, we'll hope that you'll kind of stick around to help Trees Forever plant and care for trees in your community, and also provide a voice for the trees in your community. Tree keepers often assist Trees Forever's field staff at different plantings throughout the region. Tree keepers have also been known to take initiative and organize their own tree plantings and care days in their neighborhood. We've got one brewing in Fairfield, actually, that might be very good. And we also, tree keepers participate in maintenance workshops and additional educational workshops through some of our other programs. So some projects you can organize on your own as a tree keeper once you complete this class. You can absolutely water on your own or invite adjacent property owners or other tree keepers to water a thirsty tree. Watering is the number one thing we always need help with, and a lot of people forget how vital that can be to keeping trees alive. But we hope that tree keepers can help us with that, definitely. Also, weeding, removing grass, and mulching around trees is a big help. And, honestly, just recruiting other tree keepers, telling people about this class and reaching out to people to try to get more involved, that always is a great thing. And Trees Forever also has a number of grants available if you want to organize your own tree planting, as well as the Iowa DNR has the same thing. So absolutely check that out. One of the final parts of the being a tree keeper is tree advocacy. So there's this quote we really like to talk about. Every oak tree started out as a couple of nuts who decided to stand their ground. So Iowa, if you don't know, was originally about 20% forest, but today it's sitting at about 4%. So we've seen a lot of degradation of our tree canopy throughout the state. So we're going to need a lot of work to get back to where we were before. Be the eyes and ears for your local trees. So keep an eye out on the trees in your neighborhood or in your city, and feel free to contact the city to report any problems or, take the initiative, work with the city to get a watering group going or, get different projects to support those trees. That is always a big help for all of our partners. And then day-to-day interactions, just let other people know what the benefits of trees are. Be an advocate. Seek support from others in your community about, planting trees and protecting them. And find out what other communities are doing and share that with the elected officials and members of your community. You could also always talk or write to an elected official, let them know that you support tree care efforts in your city. You could always address the mayor or the city council about the importance of trees and tree planting, and build relationships with elected officials. They will see your group as a valuable asset if tree issues arise. So really what Tree Keepers is all about is creating a network of volunteers and passionate tree advocates who can come up at any moment and get trees in the ground or really just support the trees that are already there and make sure that they survive. Alrighty. So that is just a very brief overview of what Trees Forever is all about, and we'll be going more into all these different aspects throughout the presentation. But without further ado, I'm going to start turning it over to Jeff Jensen, our Director of Community Programs, who's going to talk to you about some programs in tree biology. So Jeff has prepared a video that I am going to play right now. 1 second. Alrighty, here we go.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jeff Jensen, Director of Community Programs with Trees Forever, and I am jazzed that you're here with us tonight to start your tree keeper journey. Just a little bit about me. In my role with Trees Forever, I manage our Iowa and Illinois field staff, implementing planting projects, working with communities to strengthen their urban canopy, and facilitating community planning through the Visioning program and our partnership with Iowa State University. It is verified. I am a little nuts, growing hazelnuts on my farm in north central Iowa, and I'm active with the Iowa Nut Growers Association and the Northern Nut Growers Association. But enough about me. Let's get on to the reason why we're all here. Let's become tree keepers. I'll be starting us off with a quick overview of the programs and grants available through Trees Forever. This won't be all-encompassing, but a quick rundown of funding available primarily to communities for planting natives like trees. Then we're going to switch gears and dive into tree biology, which includes the anatomy of a tree and the physiology or function of the parts of a tree. We have a lot to get through. Luckily, I have some helpers monitoring the chat for questions, so as I'm rolling through my talk, feel free to type in questions you have, and our helpers will answer if they can, or simply wait to the end of my presentation, and I'll be taking questions then as well. Black Hills Energy Power of Trees is a partnership of Black Hills Energy, Trees Forever, and your community to fund tree plantings that save energy, beautify your community, and enhance the environment. It is offered to Iowa communities that are served by Black Hills Energy. Trees can be planted on both public and private property, but to qualify, the trees must relate to energy efficiency. Projects include trees planted in the public right-of-way between streets and buildings, around schools and public buildings. Black Hills Energy provides grants of up to $5,000 per community for community-based tree planting projects. Trees Forever administers the program and provides staff to help community leaders and volunteers plan and complete successful, long-lasting projects. Alliant Energy is a long-term partner with Trees Forever, providing funding to eligible communities for tree plantings on public property. Alliant Energy, Trees Forever, and your community work together to plan, fund, and implement community tree planting projects. The program is designed to encourage energy efficiency, environmental awareness, and community stewardship in Iowa. The 1 Million Trees program is offered exclusively to Iowa and Wisconsin communities, where Alliant Energy provides electrical and/or natural gas service. Planting locations must be within the Alliant Energy service area and receive energy-saving benefits from the new trees. The utility provides grants up to $5,000 per community. Trees Forever administers and facilitates the program, providing organizational, educational, planning, and planting support through our network of experienced field staff. To apply for an Alliant Energy tree planting grant, complete the application form and submit a project plan and proposal letter. The application process is competitive, and preference is given to applicants with thorough and complete documentation that meets all program guidelines. Project grants are awarded once per year in the fall, but the proposed plantings may occur the following fall or spring. Trees Forever's Recover, Replant, Restore program assists communities in central and southern Illinois to build healthy and diverse community forests. Supported by the U.S. Forest Service and the Illinois Department of Natural Resources, Trees Forever will help your community recover from and prepare for natural disasters. Man-made disasters, think of things like emerald ash borer and other devastating pests that endanger your community forest. Replant with a diverse, disease and storm-resistant selection of tree species, and restore a healthy and beneficial community forest. Trees Forever can also help your community with technical assistance, forming a tree board, updating or creating tree ordinances, and we can help guide you through the Tree City USA process. Stewards of the Beautiful Land explores the importance of native landscapes and roadsides for multiple benefits. Discover how native plants and trees can work for your community to clean our air, water, and soil, and provide much-needed pollinator habitat. Learn about plant identification, what, where, and how to plant, establishment practices, pollinator habitat needs, threats to native habitats, advocacy opportunities, and available resources for further learning. These programs and grants outlined only represent our outstate Iowa and Illinois communities. Des Moines and Cedar Rapids metro areas also have additional programs and grants applicable to those areas. With coverage like that, the question is, how will you work with Trees Forever? Next up, we're going to take a dive into tree biology, anatomy, and physiology. Okay, let's begin with a little terminology. In this diagram showing a deciduous tree, that's one that loses its leaves, at the top is the central leader, which is the single branch growing straight up from the trunk. Then from that you have all the branches and leaves, and collectively we call this the crown of the tree. Of course, you have the trunk, which is the main stem. Moving down from the trunk, if your tree was grafted, you will see the graft union. Whether it's grafted or not, you should see the root flare or collar, which is where the trunk thickens as it becomes root underground. And speaking of underground, that is where the roots are. Let's talk leaves. The leaf is the part of the tree where food is produced through photosynthesis. It's also where the gas exchange, via stomata, allows the intake of carbon dioxide and the release of oxygen. Another primary function of the leaf is transpiration, which regulates temperature and facilitates mineral and water movement in the plant. Looking at the parts of a leaf, we have the tip, then the blade and veins, which are connected to the petiole, and the petiole is connected to the branch or stem. The stipule is simply a leafy-like appendage at the base of the petiole. This blown-up diagram depicts transpiration through the stomata on the leaf. During this process, CO2 is taken in, and water and oxygen are released. Many of us remember as kids the old saying that the trees do the opposite of humans, and that's still correct. We can't have a discussion about trees without briefly talking about the magic that is chlorophyll, a complex molecule that contains chloroplasts which carry out photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is the conversion of sunlight into chemical energy like glucose, cellulose, starches, and more that the plant can use as food to grow. Incidentally, as someone who loves pancakes with real maple syrup, I appreciate the chemical energy created by hard maple trees and their sap, allowing me delicious maple syrup. This is the furthest extent that we're going to talk about this subject, because in reality, this could be an almost 30-minute standalone presentation, but it is important to remember the power of photosynthesis and where it takes place. In the leaves of the tree. The twigs and branches are transferring water and nutrients throughout the tree, providing structural support and strength, and produce the leaves, flowers, fruits, and nuts we all love. The anatomy of the twig. Starting at the top, this is going to be your terminal bud, located at the tip of the twig, typically larger than lateral buds. It doesn't have a leaf scar and is also called the apical bud on the lead shoot at the top of the plant. Then you have the bud scales, which are there to provide some protection for the terminal and some lateral buds. Lateral buds will eventually grow into branches and flowers and form along the nodes of the branch. As the name implies, the leaf scar is the scar left after the leaf falls from the twig, and they are distinguishable and one method of helping to actually identify trees. Lenticels are pores that penetrate the surface of the twig and facilitate gas exchange, essentially uptake of CO2 during photosynthesis. Next, you have the node and the internode, which is simply the area of the stem between nodes and are places where one or more leaves or buds are born. Finally, you have the pith. This is the inner core of the twig, and it functions in the storage and transport of nutrients to various parts of the tree. As the twig matures, pith cells die and lose their functionality. As the soft, spongy pith cells die, they break down, and at maturity can be hollow or chambered. Elderberry is perhaps the quintessential example of this. A couple of things to keep in mind regarding twigs and branches. Trees grow up, not out. The terminal bud is the most active. And part of that is the fact that it is the terminal bud, but also keep in mind that the terminal bud will deliver auxins generated by the plant that will naturally slow down those lateral buds in close proximity. Keep in mind that although lateral buds are often dormant, that can quickly change, depending on what happens to the tree and if pruning potentially removes that terminal bud. I'm not going to spend hardly any time at all on this, but this is a nice graphic, and this issue will come up again when we talk about pruning. But keep in mind that a branch is connected to the trunk of a tree because of the interlocking nature of the branch and the trunk tissue occurring at the branch collar. Furthermore, healthy branch attachments are U-shaped and not V-shaped, as we can see from the next slide. As this picture shows, we have a healthy branch union on the left side of the screen with a prominent U shape, and then next to it, a much weaker V-shaped branch union. The trunk of the tree has an important role to play as it transports water and nutrients up and down the tree and provides structural support. Remember, the trunk grows out and not up. Starting from the outside and moving in, we have the outer bark, which protects the tree, insulates it, and is renewed from within. Then you have the inner bark, with the phloem to the outside, transporting food in the form of sugars, amino acids, vitamins, hormones, and etc. Moving inward, we have the cambium, which is an extremely thin cylinder of meristematic tissue found just under the bark. New cells are formed on both sides of the cambium each year. Heartwood is found at the center of the tree. It is composed of old xylem tissue that is no longer living, but still retains structural strength. Sapwood is the living xylem inside the cambial layer that is actively involved in fluid transport. Phloem is to the outside, just beneath the bark, and moves around water and sap. The tree rings found in trunks are a result of variations in growth rate and in the type of wood produced early and late in the growing season. Within each ring, the lighter wood is springwood, formed early in the season, with larger, thin-walled cells. The darker, thick-walled cells of the summer wood are formed later in the year. The xylem conducts water and nutrients throughout the tree to the leaves and provides some strength. The two components of xylem are the sapwood and heartwood. Sapwood is new wood. As newer rings of sapwood are laid down, inner cells turn to heartwood. Heartwood then is the central supporting pillar of the tree. It is dead, but it will not decay if the outer layers are intact. Lignin is a primary constituent of heart and sapwood. As we move to the roots of trees, just a quick mention about the root collar. This is where the main trunk of the tree thickens and is the point that should be planted at ground level. Field coordinators are told to preach not planting too deep because it really is one of the easiest ways to kill trees. So if you have an opportunity to plant some trees, be sure to look for the root collar and then be sure that that is what's planted at ground level. If your tree looks like a telephone pole going straight down into the ground like the photo on the left, it is planted incorrectly. We want to see the flare of the tree visible at ground level. Tree roots anchor the tree into the ground, absorb and transport water and nutrients and oxygen to other parts of the tree, as well as stores food, and from my perspective, keeps soil in place. As this diagram shows, roots are going to grow where conditions allow. Those conditions being moisture, oxygen, temperature, and nutrients. Absorbing roots are typically found in the upper 12 inches of soil, and as the name implies, is absorbing water and nutrients. Then you have the lateral roots, which are side roots that branch off from the main root. Then the sinker roots grow down from the lateral roots and help to anchor the tree in place. The taproot is the primary root of the tree. As this picture shows, roots are mostly towards the surface of the soil to facilitate oxygen exchange. Zooming in, we can see the thicker main roots give way to smaller and finer roots. Let's spend our last few minutes together talking about flowers, fruits, and seeds. Starting with flowers. A flower is the reproductive structure of flowering plants containing the male and female reproductive organs. Next, fruit is the mature, ripened ovary of a flowering plant containing the seeds, and it functions to protect and disperse the seeds to ensure continuation of the species. And finally, seeds. Seeds are the reproductive unit of the plant and contain several components, including the embryo, the endosperm, and the seed coat. Angiosperms bear flowers and fruit and are characterized by having seeds enclosed within a fruit. They are the dominant plant group on the planet, making up about 80% of all known living plants and 90% of all trees. The gymnosperms are this group of woody, perennial, seed-producing plants that often lack the protective outer covering which surrounds the seeds in flowering plants. This will include conifers, cycads, ginkgos as some of the most famous examples. And this is where cones come from. That's going to wrap things up for tree biology. Let's get to questions that folks may have.
All righty. Well, thank you very much, Jeff. That was awesome. So as Jeff mentioned, if anybody has any questions, please drop them in the chat and I will highlight them for Jeff to answer. Meanwhile, I am going to put a new quiz in the field, quickly talking about some of the things we just learned. So please answer those to the best of your ability. Hopefully you can all see those now. And as you're filling that out, yeah, please, if you think of any questions, any comments, please put those in the chat and we can talk about those as a group. If you can't see the quiz, I'll try to drop some of the questions into the chat directly.
The quiz is a pop-up, so if you're on a cell phone or maybe something that blocks pop-ups, that might be an issue. Thank you, Enzo. There you go. Well, the first question that we had was in regards to the union, and so we want to know which is preferred, a U-shaped or a V-shaped. And Enzo, do we have any results back from that?
Yes, sorry. Let's see. We've got 91% saying true and 9% saying false.
And thank you, Natalie Mormon. Yes, a U-shaped joint is what's preferred. So then that brings us to our second question, which is true or false? The stipule connects the leaf blade to the stem. What's the survey say on this one, Enzo?
Survey says 69% true.
And what is the true answer?
The true answer is false.
Ha ha! So it's the petiole. The petiole is actually what connects the leaf blade to the stem or to the twig. The stipule is just a little appendage at the base of the petiole there. Okay, and our third question is all about true or false. The taproot grows out from the sides of the main root. What's the
83% said false.
say that again?
82% said false to number three.
And that is correct. That taproot's going to be the main root growing straight down. And then we have xylem. The xylem contains both the sapwood and the heartwood. True or false?
66% said true.
Oh, 60-40 roughly, 66-33.
Yeah.
And the true answer is
That would be true.
yes. 66%ers got it right. And then finally, this is a fun one here. The oldest known tree in the world is how old? And what was the consensus from the folks in the audience?
Looks like we've got a pretty close tie between about 25% saying 3,500 to 5,000 years old, and then 38% saying older than 5,000 years old.
Well, I think Tom in the chat said it best. That's true. We may not have found the world's oldest tree, but as far as we know, the answer is over 5,000 years. And that one, I think, is right here in the US. Methuselah, bristlecone pine out in California. Google that one. And just keep in mind that this is in the same state as the giant sequoias. And look at this bristlecone pine compared to those giant sequoias and think that the bristlecone pine is maybe double the age of those giant sequoias. So, anyways, that's enough for me. I'll turn it over to Enzo and Shayla. Hey, have a great night, everyone.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Jeff. We really appreciate it. All right, so seeing no questions right now, and if you think of any throughout the rest of the presentation, feel free to drop those in chat and we can cover those. But I will now turn it over to Shayla Claiborne, our urban forestry project manager, who will be talking to you about tree identification. Shayla, take it away.
Sorry. Okay. Getting my screen situated here.
All good.
All right. Welcome, everyone. We're going to go over some of the basics for tree ID and just the process that we kind of work through to learn them. Thank you, Jeff, for running through the biology basics. Understanding some of those tidbits of anatomy will be useful clues to work out the identity of the trees. Basically, when you are walking up to a tree, it's like walking up to a tree and asking, "Who are you?" Only you have to pull the pieces together since trees don't talk to us. There are many features of a tree that we can explore to learn just precisely who or what species a particular tree is. We'll start out by looking at this tree ID key. This tool is known as a dichotomous key. It helps to guide us through the process of narrowing in on our tree, starting with broad categories to more specific details. We do this through answering a series of yes or no questions. You can think of it as a game of 21 questions or guess who, where you're searching for the identity of the tree by piecing together the clues. There's a couple other nice tools. Arborday.org and Iowa State Extension both have a great tool that allows you to go through and answer the yes or no questions and help you narrow in on your tree. And now we will go through the process looking at the larger categories to get a feel for how we can narrow in on the tree we're looking at. So we start out by deciding which two categories our tree is in. It's either a deciduous, where it's a broadleaf tree, and these are the ones that lose their leaves in the fall. and remain bare over winter. And they often provide really nice shade and fruits. And then the other category is conifers. They are mostly trees with needles that retain them over winter. They remain green and have cones. Conifers are often used in windbreaks and offer some color in the winter. There are always exceptions to the rules. So although most conifers keep their leaves and are evergreens, there are a handful that are actually deciduous and lose their needles during the winter. So let's take a look at these two photos. Now let's imagine these two pictures are taken at the same time, same season. And you'll notice the tree on the left is deciduous, it's changing color, and it will not have leaves for too much longer. While the coniferous tree on the right, the pine, will remain green and keep its leaves. They do sometimes drop leaves on the inside of the tree as they grow and mature, but ultimately they keep their needles. The next feature, when we decide that a tree is deciduous, it's broadleaf, is we want to look at the pattern that the leaves and the branches follow. You'll see here we have opposite and alternate are our two main options. With opposite, the twigs and branches will be on the opposite sides of one another in pairs. Some of the older branches will have lost some of these, so it helps to look at newer growth and at more than one location of the tree to decide. If you only look at a small portion of the tree, you might get the wrong idea. So you want to take in the whole thing. And alternate pattern is just that, the leaves alternate down the branch. This part is very helpful in helping us narrow in here in Iowa because we have a lot more species that are alternate. The species that are opposite can be remembered by the mnemonic trick mad horse. Mad is maple, ash, dogwood, and horse is horse chestnut or buckeye. And those are the trees that have opposite branching, like this. Do keep in mind that if you're in an urban setting, like a park or arboretum, trees could be from all over the world. We like to plant things in places that they aren't normally. But if it's a native forested area, this will give you a good idea of what you're looking at. There's another example of alternate and opposite. And here you can kind of see the buds that we'll get into a little bit that Jeff was talking about as well. Next, we're going to look at leaf shape and characteristics. Personally, I think leaf shape is really helpful when you're first starting out. Helps you to kind of get a general idea, and they're usually the most accessible or like most obvious details when you're looking and comparing trees. So definitely summer and fall is prime time to start learning your trees. Once you get used to identifying a tree based on its leaf, you can start taking in other features such as bark texture and color, overall shape, and the shape of bud scars and the fruit. This can all add helpful clues when leaves are not available or accessible, like when you can't reach them, and when deciding between trees with similar features. Let's start at the top of the chart here. Again, we have the opposite and the alternate. Moving down, we're looking at overall leaf composition. A simple leaf is where the leaf is all one blade with a stem. It can have lobes and unique edges, but will not split into leaflets. A compound leaf is where the leaf is comprised of several sections called leaflets that all attach to a single stem. You will notice two different types of compound leaves here on the chart. The left being palmately compound. This basically means that it radiates out of a center point, and it helps me to think of it as like my hand or my fingers all radiate out from my palm. and they have that central point there. And then pinnately compound leaves have leaflets that are parallel of each other across the stem. And then this case is much more unique. It is doubly compound. So not only is it mirrored here, but it's also mirrored across. All right, in the next section, we have the edges of the leaves here. An entire blade for a leaf is one that is not broken up by shapes or teeth. So then we can move over to the toothed leaves. This one here is serrated. You can see the sharp points. For serrated leaves, they really kind of point up towards the tip here. Really fine. And then dentate are kind of larger angled points that point more out. And then looking at lobed leaves, this can take many forms. Looking at like the anatomy of a leaf, like Jeff was talking about, we have the lobes and the sinuses, and different species have very unique patterns. So it really helps to tell and whether they're very deep sinuses, and like here on this one, it can also have some teeth. And then we'll get more into evergreens in a bit, but here are some of the categories that you can tell by working through the evergreens. Here's another example. You have a simple leaf, a lobed leaf, a couple different options. And then compound. This one's pinnate leaf, and this one is, palmately and pinnately. Another example here. You can really see this here has the one center point. And then these here have the long leaflets on the bottom right. All right, now we need to take a closer look. How can you tell if a leaf is compound or not? There are buds at the base of each leaf. If it doesn't have a bud, then it's a leaflet and part of a compound leaf. So if you can look here at this river birch, you can clearly see buds here at the base of the stem. And then on some of our compound leaves, you won't see a bud at the very bottom. You'll see it at the bottom of the grouping of all the leaflets. All right, we'll take a look at this. We're going to have a quiz in a little bit, but let's kind of move through and see some of the key features each of these trees have. Here at A, you can see that it's lobed. It has several ridges. It's very, I'd say they really stand out in Iowa, and they're very large leaves. B is a towering tree, often along the rivers. And you can see the teeth on the edge of it here are pretty unique. C has that fine edge with no teeth, and it's got a heart shape. D is palmately compound. All of these leaflets are coming into one point in the middle. And this one, there are a lot of different species in Iowa that have pinnately compound leaves. And one feature that helps to distinguish them is how many leaflets they have on each leaf. It really varies a lot across species. So it's helpful to get familiar with those. And looking at F here, there are teeth on this one. You can also have one that is doubly serrated. So not only does it have the normal serrations, but it has an extra kind of tooth in between. So when you're really kind of getting into the nitty gritty and looking at comparing two trees that are both serrated, it helps to know some of those things. This one here also you can look at, we didn't talk about, it has a unique leaf base. It does not match on both sides. So this is actually a distinguishing characteristic of this species when you're out. And then G, we have that unique doubly compound leaf. And we can throw in some guesses, kind of write down what you're thinking, and we'll come back to those and find out what they are in a little bit. Looking at common trees in Iowa, one really common tree that most people are pretty familiar with more recently is ash trees. You can look here, they have opposite branching leaves. Remember, it's the mad horse. It's maple ash, dogwood, horse chestnut. So ash has opposite leaves of 5 or more, and the seeds here are shaped like canoe paddles. They're pretty unique, and they are now restricted from planting. If you haven't heard, the emerald ash borer has really done a number on these trees and has decimated most of our ash population. You might notice some that are still like full canopy. You can look closer and see they might have plugs in them from being treated from the emerald ash borer, but they're an invasive pest that has kind of gone through and taken out a lot of our ash. So we're working to rebuild our canopy, and we're hoping to diversify different species in our canopy so that if we have another pest that comes through, it won't demolish the majority of our trees again. So we'll keep looking at other trees to appreciate some of the other features. Most people are familiar with our oaks. Here you can see the white oak family. These 3 on top are in the white oak family, and these 3 on the bottom are the red oak. There's a lot more in each category, but these are good examples. Some of our native ones here are bur, white, swamp white, black, northern pin, and red oak. And yeah, it's just one of our largest and some of our older trees, and they're really great habitats for a lot of our wildlife. So if you look here, the white oak family has smooth lobes, whereas the red oak family has pointed lobes. And I like to think of it as the pointed lobes are sharp. So if you poked them, they could make you bleed. So red, like blood. Yeah, and then over my time, spending more time learning the trees, I find it helpful to have like a picture like this where you can compare similar trees when you're in the field, just to kind of narrow in on what exact species you're looking at. It can be really helpful to have a comparison. Here's another feature, especially in the winter, if we don't have leaves to compare, but all the oaks have different acorns that are unique to them. So if you know your acorns, you can know exactly which tree it is. Some of them differ by the size of their hats or the texture, the length of the body. Yeah, and it's just really fun to play around and kind of quiz yourself, just like looking at acorns. Now, maple trees is also one of our larger populations of trees in Iowa. The ones we have here that are native is silver maple, red, box elder, sugar, and black. And the seeds are like helicopters, which are pretty distinctive. Most people are familiar. I like to look at these side by side as well, because the maples can be tricky to tell apart sometimes. This silver maple, I like to think of it as like a silver sword. It just has like a longer, more narrow middle. And then I left this Norway maple on here. It's not native, but we have a lot of them here in Iowa, especially in urban settings. And it looks an awful lot like the sugar maple. So one trick to tell that it's a Norway maple is that if you pull a leaf and you squeeze the stem, it'll have a milky substance at the bottom of it. It's a fun trick to tell them apart. Their bark is also pretty different, so you can look at their bark to figure it out. And here are those samaras, our helicopter seeds. Yeah, so if you kind of look between them, there are a lot of similarities, but you can tell like the angle that they're at, how they're joined. There are a lot of different little characteristics that you can really look at to compare. Sometimes the coloration. But yeah, just looking at all the little hints you can find. This is a fun one. I wasn't familiar with it until a few years back, but this is a tulip tree. And it actually has this nice big flower that blooms. They're pretty wild. And then it has an unusual leaf shape. Instead of having that center point that a lot of leaves do, it has 2 points. And if you look at it, it has like the outline of a tulip. Here's like, this is the flower, and here are the leaves at the bottom. And yeah, just the wild colored flower is pretty memorable. This one is hackberry. It's one of my favorite trees. It's kind of funky. It's pretty distinguishable by its bark, which, mostly we're relying on leaves, but here you can almost always tell this is a hackberry because it has warty, I can call it warty bark. It's all bumpy with the ridges. And sometimes when they're younger, they're more smooth at the bottom, so you may have to look up. Same with bur oak. Just when they're younger, it's harder to tell sometimes from the bark. And then here we have the leaf, it's serrated. And then these little things here are called galls. And they have a unique relationship with the hackberry because there's a specific insect that creates these in the hackberry. So sometimes people joke that is itself a feature. If you have a tree with lots of galls, a lot of times it's a hackberry. All right. And this beauty isn't native, but it's really interesting. I encourage you to look up more about it. It's a ginkgo. It does really well in our urban settings. It's considered to be a living fossil. And let's see. Yeah, it's the only surviving member of a group of ancient plants believed to have inhabited the earth up to 150 million years ago. So nurseries attempt to just sell male trees a lot of times. The female trees do produce a stinky round fruit that Jeff hinted at earlier. And they're interesting because their fruit makes them be in the gymnosperm category. So they're a little different than our other broadleaf deciduous trees. But yeah, they have this really pretty fan-like shape and often a bright gold fall color. All right, moving on to our conifers. These are interesting. I know a lot of people look at evergreens and sometimes it's hard to know that there's so many different species in the category. But here in Iowa, the eastern white pine is our only native conifer, but we do plant a lot of these others. So you can look closer here. We have scale-like needles for the arborvitae. The juniper has an awl-shaped. You have linear. Single needles and bundled needles are a really good way to tell some of these apart. And then clusters of needles are specific to the larch. Here you can see the two different groups. Leaves in clusters. Our pines have bundles of needles that are in clusters, and you have 2, 3, or 5 in each bundle. The easiest one, I think, is the white pine, just because if it has 5 needles, there's 5 letters in white, so it's easy to remember. Some of the other ones, like jack pine and Scotch pine, have 2 or 3 needles. And then looking at the spruce and fir category, they have like individually attached needles instead of bundles. For spruce, you can think of short, square, sharp, single. They all start with S, but very sharp. That's the one that sticks out to me. Versus firs, which have a softer flat needle. They're kind of rounded at the edges, so they're easier to distinguish between the two. Again, the white pine is the only one native in Iowa, but we do use a lot of spruce and fir. And you can see here, this left picture is a pine, has those soft bundles. And if you look over here, this is a blue spruce. It has those short individual needles that are really spiky. All right, here we are looking at our identification again. If you want to write down your guesses, you can go ahead and do that, and we'll go over them here in just a minute. Really take in their specific features to get these leaf shapes down. You'll start to recognize them when you're out walking around in the park. All right, do we have any tree ID questions on how to identify? There's nothing in the chat. We'll go ahead and go through our quiz.
I have a question.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you mentioned eastern white pines as being our only native conifers in Iowa. Um, what are your thoughts on red cedars?
Oh, that's hotly debated. That is a great question. And it's interesting because they are native, but mostly to one section of the state. Whereas they become pretty aggressive in the other portion of the state. So while we still plant them in some areas, they can really get kind of wild, and we got to rein them in a little bit.
Uh-oh, I may have opened up a can of worms here. We're gonna find out.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's Ruth here. I like the red cedar. What we do is we have a lot of CRP. We dig out small red cedars and then we plant them where we want them to be like kind of a blockade with a neighbor or some kind of screen. And yeah, we make sure that it's not female with the berries, right? So we have whatever the male is without those little blue berry things. And it's like getting free trees because we have to get rid of them anyhow out of the CRP buffer. And so why not use this tree? We barely have to water them in most of the time. I mean, just a few waterings and then they'll just take off and they grow pretty well. So I've been really happy with that. Um, it's kind of nice. And then people make all kinds of wood products, like expensive wood products with red cedar. So one person's trash, it's just like, why is this a junk tree? Same with box elder. People, oh, those are your junk trees. Well, I've been hearing it's like the best maple syrup of all. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of demystification that needs to happen here.
Yeah, absolutely. Good point, Ruth. Definitely depends on your perspective and your use of them. It's kind of like, you can call anything a weed if you don't want it where it's at. So, all right. Any other questions?
Yeah, we did have a question from SL in the chat. They said, I've heard ginkgos lose all their leaves in one day in autumn. Is that correct?
Actually, can't speak to that. Jeff, do you have any experience with ginkgo?
I don't, but that's Google worthy.
Yeah, I'm curious. I'm going to be
That'd be very
watching them now.
cool, sure. Yeah. We
Yeah.
had another question from Scott Hauser who said that they downloaded on his cell phone the iNat Classic app to identify leaves, and he was wondering, are there any better apps that anyone uses?
Yeah, personally, I use Picture This a lot to just double check things. Like they're not 100%, but it gives you a good jumping off point. You always want to verify what you're looking at. But yeah, Picture This has been pretty helpful, and it's pretty accurate for the most part. All right, and then if we want to go to our quiz here,
Yeah, so
you
we
can
have
talk.
yeah. So if anyone has guesses on the leaves listed here, please feel free to drop those into the chat.
Should we go through them? And I know everybody's been waiting on the edge of their seat to find out what these are. This first tree, A, is very distinctive by its bark. Has really white, beautiful bark at the top and kind of flaky. This is a sycamore. E grows along our rivers. It has these nice soft teeth along the edges here. This is a cottonwood. And C, as we were saying earlier, it's heart-shaped. And it's a shorter tree, so it's not a big shade tree. But this one is the redbud. And you'll see it has bright purple flowers for a short time in the spring. They're really pretty. D is buckeye, and it has that palmately compound leaf. You don't see too many with that shape, so that's pretty helpful. E, kind of like the red cedar. There's a little bit of a debate, but black walnut are a real nice big shade tree. And it has those pinnately compound. F is an elm leaf. It has those nice fine teeth, serrated, and it has this kind of funky base where it's not symmetrical on both sides. And then G, did we have any guesses for G? It's kind of a fun one. It is doubly compound. And so this whole thing you see here on the screen is one leaf. So it loses this entire thing for fall. And all of these are leaflets. But it's the Kentucky coffee tree, which I think we need to plant more of. They're beautiful. They have really beautiful bark. And I think that's it for tree ID. Any other questions?
I've always heard the Kentucky coffee tree referred to as the ugly duckling of trees, and that when it's planted very young, it looks kind of not great. It's just kind of a stick with a couple leaves on it. But once it, gets that chance to flourish, it looks really beautiful.
That's right. You just got to give it time.
Yeah. All right. I am not seeing any further questions. Oh, Ash Tree is asking, can you repeat the Mad Horse acronym?
Yes. So for Mad Horse, those are the ones that have opposite branching, and it's maple, ash, dogwood, and then horse chestnut or buckeye.
Very cool. Well, I'm not seeing any more questions, so I might drop a couple of those discussion points in chat for people to talk about.
Well,
So
real
yeah.
quick,
Oh,
some
sorry, go ahead.
feedback from folks. Would participation in the leaf identification be improved if it was anonymous and you didn't have to put your answers in the chat? Let us know in the chat.
Fair. Yeah.
Hey, we've all been beginners.
That's right. That's right.
All right, so our first discussion question here is two general categories we use for ID are deciduous and coniferous. Do you know any exceptions to this rule? Melissa says bald cypress.
What's the other one? European
Tamarack or larch?
oh,
Yeah,
what'd you say,
tamarack. I think a tamarack is a larch. Larch is the genre, I think.
You learn something new every day. Okay.
Parse that apart. And then also Don Redwood. I didn't realize.
Those are nice trees. They don't do well in the right of way, though, as we found out.
That's good to know. Bald cypress is like similar. I feel like it feels that. They're really beautiful too.
Ooh, we have a question here. Which is more native to Iowa, the horse chestnut or buckeye? Which one is more useful?
That's a great question. I really can't answer that one. I'm not sure. Anybody else have some insight?
I feel like I've seen more horse chestnuts than I've seen buckeyes, but I have a very limited experience.
And I live in northern Iowa, so I see maybe a few more buckeyes than horse chestnuts.
There you go.
And in terms of usefulness, my understanding is they're really only useful to like put in your pocket as a good luck charm. So for me, the smaller the better. But I don't know. That's individual use may vary.
Mhm.
Absolutely. All right, I'll drop another discussion point here. What is it called when a leaf has teeth along the edge of the leaf blade? SL says serrated. That is correct.
Nice. Yep. Serrated or dentate.
Nice. All right, and then we have a final discussion question here. Which do you prefer, broadleaf or evergreen, the ultimate showdown, and why? This is very subjective, so there's no right answer. I guess depending on who you ask. Lots of evergreen so far for
Okay.
the winter interest.
Yeah.
That's right, Jeff. Right tree, right place. Words to live by. Melissa says nut trees. There you go. SL says both big oaks. Got some people saying broadleaves here. Oh, and in regards to the ginkgos losing all their leaves in one day in autumn, Melissa says that they do when it freezes. She's noticed that several years at least that they don't handle the frost as well as other trees.
And hey, folks, we might find out here pretty quick. So just pay attention this week because there might be frost warnings. And so
Yeah.
wouldn't that be something if we just talked about this at the Tree Keepers session and then voila.
Yeah, I agree, Rita. It's hard to choose one or the other. Evergreen and broadleaf are nice. Georgia points out that it's a good food source for birds. Very true. Denny asks, where does mulberry fit in?
Don't ask me.
Yeah, so one mulberry, I want to say it's white mulberry is the invasive one, and red mulberry is native. I see a lot more white mulberry, but yeah, they can be a good food source for animals, but they are kind of a pain if you don't want the mulberry everywhere. They're pretty good at taking over areas. So we like the red mulberry. And it's a deciduous, in case that was the question.
Fair. Mike says he loves them all. Green in winter is as important as shade in summer. Very true. All right. Does anybody else have any more questions?
Enzo, would it be appropriate to make a quick plug to folks that this coming Wednesday, that's tomorrow, folks, we have a Stewards of the Beautiful Land over the noon
Yes.
hour webinar on managing invasive species in prairies and roadsides. And we have a featured presenter of Chris Hensey from the Johnson County. He's the Johnson County Roadside Manager. Absolutely phenomenal, exceptional in terms of his knowledge. He's worked with the roadsides and has firsthand experience and is a great presenter. So please go check that out on our website. It's not too late to get registered. Yes, it will be recorded, but he is going to be answering questions. We just announced this 10 days ago, and I have almost a dozen questions. People have emailed me directly saying, please answer this one. I have this problem. So if you have issues with a prairie setting or a roadside or just some woody invasives, be sure to check that out.
Yeah, and to that point, Jeff, I think I pulled up, I tried to put together as many of the upcoming events as I can. So, and I'll be sending this out in an email to everybody after this session. But yeah, there are lots of opportunities to get involved here, lots of ways to learn different things. And to that end, I really wanted to quickly walk you guys through the Trees Forever website before we wrap up for the night. So yeah, if you pop over to treesforever.org, that is our faithful website here. Lots of information here about different things going on, lots of different information you can read. But I wanted to draw your attention to a few different areas here. So first and foremost, even though you haven't completed the course yet, we're absolutely always in search of volunteers. So if you go to treesforever.org/volunteer or navigate over here to the volunteer tab, you'll see a number of different buttons here. So if you click on where you're looking for volunteer opportunities, it'll filter our event calendar and show you volunteer opportunities and different events available in your area. So here we can see we've got our September calendar here, lots of things coming up. Like Jeff said, we've got our Stewards of the Beautiful Land coming up tomorrow. So yeah, you can just register for that right here. Same with different volunteer opportunities. This Friday, a little plug for the Cedar Rapids area. We're having what's called the Party at the Park, where we'll be celebrating the progress of the Relieve Cedar Rapids plan at Beaver Park in Cedar Rapids if you're in the area. So please come on by, have some hot dogs and sodas. It's going to be a good time. Kind of similar to that, the events calendar is just a general list of all the things we have coming up, whether it's volunteers or different seminars, tree distributions, anything you could dream of that you want to get involved with Trees Forever can be found here. And then one of the last areas I want to show is if you go to treesforever.org/TK resources, and I'll send this link out in an email after today's session. This will be a special thing that you can log into, and I'll try to show you real quick. And this is just to tell who's kind of logging in here and make sure that they're tree keepers. So once you log into this tree keepers, we will have a number of links available. So all the slides from all the different presentations today, you'll be able to find here and all the subsequent presentations. We'll also have a number of publications from partner organizations, and we'll have all of the missed sessions and the recordings available for you to view at your pleasure and share with any friends you might have. So yeah, I will send that out to everybody after today's session. But yeah, that is about all we have today. Oops, sorry. Um, yes, if you're registered for one tree keeper session, you're registered for them all. So you'll be on our list, and I'll send out the invite via Zoom. But yeah, that is all we've got for today. So thank you all so much. And like I said, I'll be sending out a follow-up with the link to next week's session as well as some of the resources from today. So on behalf of all of us here at Trees Forever, we just want to thank you for taking the time to learn with us tonight. And thank you again to Jeff and Shayla for great presentations today. We really appreciate it. So thank you all and have a great night.